Here we are again, another beautiful New Orleans day with my lovely assistant, Ms. Richardson, and she's going to ask me again more questions about New Orleans. We do these cold, okay? There's no preparation involved. This is all just off the top of my head. I have no idea what she's going to ask me, and that's fine because as she's learning, I'm a fountain of New Orleans knowledge. So when you come and you stay at La Belle, #1 place to stay in New Orleans, according to TripAdvisor since 2014. #2 place to stay in the United States. #16 place to stay in the world, right? Got to get that in. We're very close to the French Quarter, Tourist Central down there, but we're in the real city right here. So our job, Melanie and I, as New Orleans ambassadors, is to share what it's like to live here. And it's a fascinating city that we live in. It is much more than the French Quarter and Frenchmen Street, okay? I know your friends tell you that's where New Orleanians go. They go to Frenchmen Street to listen to music. All right, we go there once in a while, okay? But mostly it's people from out of town. So anyhow, without further ado, hit me.
Today, I want to know the difference between a Creole and Cajun.
You know the difference. You're from here. Come on.
I don't know the difference.
All right, really? Okay. So Creoles live in the city, okay? And they're people descended from when the French and the Spanish were in charge of New Orleans, okay? So before the Americans showed up, anyone who was under French or Spanish jurisdiction. Now, the French were only in charge for like 20 years, okay? And then the Spanish were in charge for 40 years. And then the French were in charge again for like maybe 2 years, and then America took over, okay? So during that time, French people lived here, obviously. Not too many Spanish people lived here, okay? And then black people, of course, Africans came here. Some as slaves, but there were a lot of free people, free Africans, free black people, according to the Code Noir, which was French law, which was later codified into Spanish law in New Orleans. And so anyone who's descended from those three races, nationalities, whatever, those are the people who we call Creoles. That said, okay, if you go to St. Bernard Parish, which is downriver, and over to Plaquemines Parish, we also technically call them Creoles as well, even though they're country people, okay? And the reason for that is it was very heavily French and Spanish, okay? In fact, when you go further downriver to Delacroix, which in French would say Delacroix, but in New Orleans or in Louisiana we say Delacroix. And down there are people called Los Isleños, okay? And they're Creoles. They're descendants from Canary Islanders who came here under the Spanish, and they lived down in Delacroix. And after Katrina, they really, that little village, it's not even incorporated, it's just a bunch of houses, that started to empty out as people move upriver more. Post-Katrina, because it's very, very isolated down there. But they have a little village that's restored. It's the Los Isleños Cultural Center. And they still speak Spanish, and they dress in traditional costume. Not all the time, mind you, mostly during festivals. But those are also called Creoles. Upriver from us, out in the country, those people are called Cajuns. Cajuns are not descended from people who were here when the French and the Spanish were here, okay? So they do speak French, whereas the Creoles do not speak French anymore. Nobody, people think we sit around and talk French all day. No, nobody in New Orleans speaks French, okay? Unless they're from France. But out in Cajun country, they do still speak French. Now, they're descended from Acadians. So Acadians are French Canadians who lived up in Quebec. And when England took over Quebec, they forced those people out. So Acadia is not really, it's Montreal, yes, but that stayed very French in Quebec itself. But outside of that, the maritime provinces, Labrador, Prince Edward Island, stuff like that, those people they forced out, they were Huguenots. And they didn't just sail down to Louisiana. It was a long time, took a long time. They marched, they walked up from Canada all the way down to Louisiana because they knew French speakers were down here, okay? And they settled out in the swamps, and they're country people. And so they're Cajuns. Cajun is what the word that originally came from, Acadian, okay? And Cajun culture is very different from Creole culture. Creole is city culture. It's much more based on France, whereas Cajun culture is based on whatever they do out there. Okay, I don't go out there too often. That said, so their music is Zydeco, okay? And you don't hear that in the city, because in the city we hear jazz, okay? New Orleans music is jazz music. Out in Acadiana, in the parishes out there, it's Zydeco. So accordion, fiddle, washboard, all that sort of stuff. However, once a week, every Thursday night at the Rockin' Bowl, okay, up on Carrollton Avenue, it's Zydeco night at the Rockin' Bowl. So some band will come out from out in the Cajun Prairie, Eunice, some place like that, Crowley. They come to the city, and people come from all over the state for Zydeco night at the Rockin' Bowl. It's a guaranteed good time, okay? Every Thursday. So I always tell people, don't make plans for Thursday night, because I got someplace good to send you. It is a real slice of Louisiana culture that you're not going to see anywhere else or any other time where you're here. Now, there's a place close to the convention center, right across from the convention center. It's called Mulate's, okay, and that's a Cajun place, and they got Zydeco there too. But that's like going to Disney World watching those animatronic bears play a song, okay? Because you got all these people from some yahoos from the orthodontist convention sitting there. They don't know what to do. Sometimes they'll get up and dance, but no, really they don't know what's going on. And those musicians, they could be playing anything because nobody knows what's happening. When you go to Rockin' Ball on Thursday night, guaranteed good time. Everybody knows what you're doing, everybody's dancing, everybody's welcome, everybody's having fun. So, difference between Cajun and Creole: Cajuns live in the country, Creoles live in the city. Very, very distinct cultures, historically speaking. And that's that.
How about their food?
Yes. How did I know that was coming, huh? Okay.
I love food.
So, Creole food is based on French cuisine, and Creole is always based on what we call a trinity, which is celery, bell pepper, and onion, and that's the base of everything, okay? And it's very heavy on sauces, okay, because it's French, so a lot of sauces are involved. Cajun food is whatever moves, they eat it, right? No, I didn't say that, no. They always say, when you go to the zoo in Baton Rouge, they have a recipe next to every cage, but no. Cajun food is spicier, okay? And that's, people mistake that. They're like, oh, I want some spicy Cajun food. I'm like, well, you got to go to Lafayette, okay? We don't have that here necessarily. That said, Paul Prudhomme, he was a chef at Commander's Palace, became very famous, opened his own restaurant, Cape Paul's, down in the French Quarter, and he's the one who really introduced Cajun cuisine. So the blackened fish, that's Cajun, okay? Gumbo, I'm not saying we never ate it in this city, we did, but really gumbo started showing up on every restaurant after Paul Prudhomme really made that very popular. Normally you would never have gumbo at Antoine's, okay, for instance. However, now, because everybody wants it, it's at Antoine's. Antoine's is your classic Creole French restaurant, okay? Granted, I'm not arguing the fact that there are other classic Creole French restaurants around. You know, you got Galatoire's, you got Arnaud's, whatnot, okay? However, Antoine's is the oldest family-owned restaurant in the United States. 178 years now, I think, if I do the math correctly in my head. It's got 13 dining rooms in there, okay? The food has not changed for 100 years, okay? Everything, it's so old-fashioned, so old school. I love it there, okay? And so I always tell people, go, because they don't make restaurants like this anymore. The service is excellent. They have 13 dining rooms. Everyone is different. You sit down, you have a meal, and you tell the waiter, you know, could you give me a tour when you have a chance? And he'll walk you through all the dining rooms, tell you the story behind each one. Now, he's a waiter, okay? He's got stuff to do. He's not here to entertain a lot of questions. He's got to take care of the tables. But he will show you everything and tell you stuff, and then you walk around afterwards and you can poke around as you see fit. Super interesting in there. I always like to say it's like eating in a living museum. They don't like it when I say that because it's not a real museum. It's not a museum, it's a real business. And they just hired a new chef who is going to update the menu a little bit. Now, hopefully he won't mess with the classics, but we'll see. Because they say, you know, we're not a museum. We're not set in amber here. So we'll see what happens. But I love it there, and it's very, very good. Other Creole places, like I say, Arnaud's is very good, and Galatoire's is very good. Galatoire's just got a new chef, Philip Lopez. I don't know if you know him, but he used to have Root, which was this cutting edge dining experience down in the Central Business District. I went a couple times. Very, very good. But it's like oysters and a cigar box, a lot of presentation stuff. And then he opened Square Root, which was this whole molecular cuisine thing. So it's super expensive. You'd spend $175 a meal. For like 12 people, you'd sit around a bar like this, and him and his chefs would prepare the dishes right there, and you would watch, and he'd explain everything. And then it was a 14-course meal, but all courses are like a tiny little thing like this. All this spreadable salami, a bunch of mousses, all stuff like that. It was okay. Once was enough for me, okay? However, for whatever reason, he closed those down, and now he's the executive chef at Galatoire's, which is totally old school. It runs on tradition, so I'm very interested to see why he was hired for that and what he's going to do with it. So the cuisine evolves here all the time. So whether it's Cajun, Creole, or the two of them blended together, there's always something going on. It is almost impossible to have a bad meal here, okay? There are over 1,300 restaurants in New Orleans. Melanie and I have eaten at over 700 of them. I can count the number of bad meals on one hand, all right? And that's the truth. So just go out, explore. You see something you're interested in, eat it. Now, I know people think that we eat shrimp po' boy, gumbo, crawfish etouffee 3 meals a day. No, we eat other stuff too. That's tourist food for the most part, okay? So you got she's shaking her head. We don't eat that all the time, certainly. And so when you get tired of that, go eat it, get it out of your system. But when you're ready for something else, there's all sorts of good food here. Most things are Creolized while you're here. So like there's a place up the street, Santa Fe, Creole Southwestern, right? So what does that mean? A lot of crawfish, a lot of seafood, a lot of Trinity, okay? And the same with like Cafe Min, where I go often, which is Viet Creole. Min, he's a restaurateur, top notch. Really, really excellent restaurant. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to run it and go out and work the room and whatnot. Most of their business, 90% is regulars, they tell me. So anyhow, I digress, which is not unusual. Anything else? How close are we?
You're at about 13 minutes.
13 minutes, that's it. All right, you have yourselves a great New Orleans day today, all right? La Belle Esplanade, to learn more, labelleesplanade.com. Ciao.